In this video, we are going to take a look at some new features in Autostrek that make it even easier to build structures from scratch. The first thing to do is select Build from Scratch on the startup screen. This opens the tape measure tool in CC mode. I build using a typical Scandinavian center-to-center measurement, which is 600 millimeters, but you can choose any center-to-center measurement you want for your structure. To start, simply pick a point on the grid. Notice that you can also change the grid size if you want. You can snap to any grid point you like, or you can type the measurement into the input box and press Enter. Now we have a lot of labels showing the center-to-center measurements. We do not need those labels when using the tape measure tool for building, so I turn them off in the sidebar. Now we can apply a shape to the line. There are several to choose from, but I want to make floor joists, so I select the rectangle. This can be any dimension you like. I am just showing you the shapes quickly here. Now we can use the anchor tool to position our shape properly. Next, I can extrude my floor joists from the rectangles. For accuracy, I use the input field to type in the length. I can also change the dimensions at any time. Now I can simply tick the close frame checkbox to complete the floor frame. I want the total width of my floor to be 2400 millimeters, so I select inside to make sure the width does not become 2400 millimeters, plus the dimensions of the end cap frame joists. This makes it much easier to set the correct width, instead of manually calculating how much I need to shorten the floor joists to make the total width exactly 2400 millimeters. The green floor joist frame is only a preview, so now I want to convert it into actual solid lumber objects. The tape measure tool always remembers the last used settings and stores the previews, which can be useful. But for now, I will delete the previews to avoid confusion. Notice that I only delete the previews for the floor frame. I do not click Reset, so the tool still remembers the last used settings. In this case, that is very useful, because two of the walls are almost the same as the floor frame, but standing upright and with slightly smaller dimensions. I can simply set new CC measurements and change a few settings to build a wall. That is all that is needed to create this wall. I generate solid lumber objects from the wall, and then do the same for the back wall. If snapping becomes a little difficult to handle, you can change the settings. You can also turn off the grid and axes entirely if you want. I missed the starting point, so I just press Escape on the keyboard to start over. Just look at how easy this is. If you spend a few hours playing around with the settings, you will discover how versatile this tool really is. Now I'm going to make the rafters, so I delete any previews and reset all the settings to default. If you are familiar with other CAD tools, you will know that making rafters can be quite a tedious and confusing task, with lots of drawing, cutting, and duplicating. In Autostrek, you do not have to do any of that. Simply set the CC tape measure where you want your rafters. It does not matter whether you start at the front or the back. Rafters are also rectangles, right? I set the dimensions for the lumber I am going to use. You do not need to think about the length of the rafters. There are several ways of doing this, but using planes makes it very easy. Just leave the CC tape measure tool for a moment. Do not worry, it remembers everything you did last, so we can safely exit and select the plane tool. Just pick a face and offset the plane from the face you placed it on. I use 200 millimeters here. For the front wall, I do the same, but use minus 200 millimeters to make it offset in the correct direction. Let us go back to the CC tape measure tool to build our rafters. Just rotate the rafters and extrude them into the plane, and they will get perfect bevels at the ends. You can fine-tune the angle later. Now I can use offset extrusion to create the roof overhang at the back. Now I can fine-tune the angle. I want it to just touch the edge of the top plate. Then I use the Move tool to sink it into the top plates where I want it. Now we can simply tick Trim to Geometry, and we get perfect bird mouths in the rafters. No drawing is required at all. Now all we have to do is generate the rafters and delete the planes. We also need some side walls. These are a little more complicated than the front and back walls, but using the right tool makes the process very fast. First, I just want to clean up the previews and settings. Then I start with a CC measurement, just like everything else. Now, you might wonder why I do not place the measurement in the opening. This is because, if you want proper CC measurement, you need to start from the outside of the wall. The way we do this is to offset the start and end points only by the depth dimension of the studs, which in my case is 98 millimeters. Of course, this can be any dimension you choose to build with. This option is found in the spacing section. Then select rectangles and set the same dimensions as the other walls. Now, we are going to use the power of Trim to Geometry again. This will automatically create the cuts I need to connect the studs to the rafters. We also have a quick plane option to stop the extrusions at the top of the rafters. Let us do this slightly differently from the front and back walls. I can now lock the previews, and I can create the opposite end wall really quickly, since it will remember the last used settings. And because I locked the first wall previews, it will not affect the anchoring or placement for that wall. Isn't that neat? Wait, I almost forgot. We also need a bottom plate. Fortunately, we can use the close frame option only for the bottom plate, since we do not need a top plate here. What about the first wall then? Simple. Just unlock it to update it. I only need to update the anchor point, since it now remembers the anchor point from the other wall. Make sure the other wall is locked, or it will update the anchor point for both walls. Generate the objects, delete the planes, and remove any previews if needed. Not everything in a building is based on center-to-center measurement, but you can always override it in the spacing. I can show you a quick example. If I need to stop the extrusions at an exact place, I can use the plane tool to stop them. In this case, it is better to use the proper measurement, and then I can use offset extrusion to create accurate overhangs. Finally, we have an integrated tool for creating custom basic 3D shapes. Using this tool together with Build Automation and the CC Tape Measure tool gives you a lot of options for building all kinds of things, even outside typical construction work. I am not making anything special here. I am just playing around with it. Use lines, guides, and offsets to create extrusion sections. This tool is still at an early stage, but it is already capable of creating useful things quickly and easily. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.